The whole galaxy believes that Earth erased my homeworld in silence. That after our fleet struck a human outpost, the humans came in the dark and annihilated our entire planet without a word, wiped out my species in revenge, left nothing but a dead world spinning in the silence. I know this is what the galaxy believes because I have heard the legend told 100 times, in 100 places, always in a hushed and frightened voice. Do not provoke the humans. Look what they did to the world that struck their outpost. They erased it in silence. And every time I hear it, I want to stand up and tell the truth that I am one of the only beings alive who knows, because I am from that world, the world Earth supposedly erased. I am standing here alive, a member of the species the galaxy thinks the humans exterminated. And the truth of what the humans actually did in that silence is the opposite of the legend, and it is the most extraordinary thing I have ever known, and I have spent my life trying to make people believe it. Let me tell you who I am. My name is Esh-Karn, and I am Vodran. And yes, Vodran, the very species the galaxy whispers about, the species whose homeworld Earth supposedly destroyed. We are not destroyed. We are here. I am here alive telling you this, which should be the first proof that the legend is a lie. But the legend is so strong and so frightening that even when a Vodran stands in front of someone and says, "My world was not destroyed, I am from it, look at me," they do not quite believe it. I have watched it happen on faces. I tell someone I am Vodran and I watch them go still, watch the fear come into their eyes and watch them try to reconcile the thing in front of them, a living Vodran, with the legend they have carried their whole lives, the legend of a species the humans wiped from existence. And do you know what they decide, most of them? They decide I must be one of the few survivors, a handful that escaped the genocide, a remnant of a murdered world. They cannot let go of the legend even with the proof standing in front of them. They just bend the legend to fit me, make me a tragic survivor of an extermination rather than what I actually am, which is a citizen of a world that is still very much alive. The story of Earth's silent annihilation of my homeworld is more satisfying, more terrible, more useful to a galaxy that wants to be afraid of the humans than the truth. The truth is harder to believe than genocide. That is the strange thing I have learned, the thing that has shaped my whole life. In our galaxy, it is easier to believe that the humans murdered a whole world than to believe what they actually did, because what they actually did is a thing our galaxy has no place for, no category for, no way to understand. A genocide the galaxy understands. A genocide fits. What the humans really did does not fit anything, and so the galaxy reaches for the genocide because at least it can hold it. Let me tell you what happened from the beginning, the way I lived it, because I was there. A child on the homeworld when it happened, old enough to remember everything, young enough that it shaped the whole rest of my life. And let me start with the thing the legend gets right, because the legend does get one thing right. My people did strike a human outpost. That part is true. A Vodran fleet attacked a human outpost on the edge of our space, struck it without warning, killed the humans there. That happened. It is the one true thing in the whole legend, and it is the thing that makes the legend believable because, of course, the galaxy reasons. Of course, the humans took terrible revenge. You struck their outpost. What did you expect? But here is the first thing the legend leaves out, the first crack in the story, and it is everything. My people did not strike that outpost. The Vodran regime did. I have to explain this because it is the heart of everything. My homeworld when I was a child was ruled by a regime, a militarist clique, a warlord government that had seized power generations before and held it through fear. The Vodran people did not choose them. The Vodran people did not want them. We lived under them the way oppressed peoples always live under tyrants, afraid, silent, our lives not our own. I remember it, the way you remember the weather of your childhood, as simply the way things were before you knew things could be different. I remember the conscription days, when the regime's officers would come to our district and take the young ones who had come of age, and the mothers who were not allowed to weep openly because weeping was a kind of disloyalty. I remember my own father speaking in a low voice with the door closed, and going silent whenever I came near, because he did not want me to hear things a child might repeat in the wrong place. I remember the great broadcasts, the regime's voice everywhere, telling us how strong we were, how feared, how the Vodran were a mighty people destined to rule, while we stood in lines for food and buried our sons and said nothing. That was the world the regime had made, a world that called itself mighty while its people lived small and frightened lives, a world where the only ones who prospered were the warlords and their soldiers, a world where to question anything was to disappear. Our young were conscripted into the regime's wars. Our voices were crushed. Our world was ruled by a small, cruel, powerful few who used the rest of us as fuel for their ambitions and called it glory and dared us to disagree. The regime was aggressive, expansionist, hungry for conquest, and it was the regime, not the people, the regime, that decided to strike the human outpost. It was a calculation by the warlords, a probe, a test of the new species at the edge of our space, a demonstration of Vodran strength to feed the legend the regime told about itself. The people of my world had no say in it. Most of us did not even know it had happened until later, until the regime's broadcasts began crowing about a great blow struck against the upstart humans, a victory, a demonstration of our might. The regime struck the human outpost in our name, with our conscripted sons and daughters, for the regime's own purposes, and then the regime waited with the rest of us to see what the humans would do. Though we did not wait the same way. The warlords waited in their fortresses, confident, gloating. The rest of us waited the way you wait when powerful fools have done something terrible in your name and you know, with a sick certainty, that when the reckoning comes it will not fall on them. It will fall on you. And what the galaxy says the humans did is this. They came in silence and they erased our homeworld and they wiped out the Vodran species in revenge for the outpost. That is the legend. That is what the whole galaxy believes happened next. A silent, total, genocidal retaliation. The humans punishing an entire world, an entire species, for the act of its rulers. And I will tell you, in those first days after the strike, we expected it too. That is the thing I have to be honest about. We did not know the humans then. We knew only what our galaxy had taught us, which was that power destroys, that the strong punish the weak, that when you strike a people they strike back tenfold, and that the reckoning for the regime's crime would fall on all of us. The regime had struck the outpost, and now, we believed, the humans would come and do to our whole world what powerful peoples always did. And we, the people, the ones who had not chosen any of this, would die for the warlord's arrogance, the way the people always die for the arrogance of the few who rule them. I remember the fear in our district in those days. I remember my mother holding me at night. I remember the broadcasts shifting, the regime's gloating giving way to a harder, grimmer tone, as the warlords too began to understand what they might have brought down on us all. We waited for the sky to fall. We waited for the humans to come and erase us, the way the galaxy says they did. But that is not what happened. That is the opposite of what happened. And the truth, the thing the humans actually did in that silence, the thing that freed my people and saved my life and remade my entire understanding of what power can be, is the thing I have to tell you, because it has been buried under a legend of genocide for too long, and the humans themselves will never tell it, because the silence was the whole point, and they have kept it to this day. Let me tell you what really happened when the Vodran regime struck a human outpost, and Earth answered in silence. And why the silence, which the whole galaxy believes was the silence of a murdered world, was in truth the most merciful and most humble thing one people has ever done for another. The sky did not fall. That is the first thing. We waited for the human fleet to appear over our world and burn it, and it did not come. Not the first day, not the second, not the third. The waiting stretched on, and the not coming became its own kind of terror because we could not understand it. The humans had been struck. By every law our galaxy knew, they should have answered and answered terribly. But the days passed in silence, and no fleet appeared, and the regime's broadcasts grew confused, then nervous, then silent themselves because the warlords did not understand the silence any better than we did. And then one morning we woke up, and the regime was gone. I do not mean the regime had fallen in some great battle. I do not mean there had been fighting in the streets, fire in the sky, a war. There had been nothing. We had heard nothing in the night, nothing at all, no weapons, no alarms, no sound. We simply woke up on an ordinary morning and the regime was gone. The warlords were gone. Their fortresses stood empty. Their soldiers' garrison stood empty. The whole apparatus of the government that had ruled my world through fear for generations, the warlords, their officers, their enforcers, the entire cruel machinery of the regime, had simply vanished in the night, silently, completely, without a trace, without a sound, without a single shot fired in the streets where the people lived. I remember the strangeness of that morning. I remember my father going out into the street, cautious, afraid it was a trick, and coming back with a look on his face I had never seen before, a look of wonder and disbelief and a fear that did not know yet whether it was allowed to become hope. The enforcers were not at their posts. The broadcast towers were silent. The regime that had been the very air we breathed, the inescapable fact of our whole lives, was simply not there anymore. It took days for us to believe it. It took longer for us to understand it. But the truth, when we finally pieced it together, was this. In the night, in total silence, someone had removed the regime, had reached into my world and plucked out the warlords and their entire apparatus of oppression, surgically, precisely, silently, and taken them away and left everything else, every ordinary Vodran, every home, every life untouched. The tyranny was gone. The people remained, and no one had heard a thing. It was the humans, of course. We did not know that at first. That was the whole point, as I would come to understand, but it was the humans. When the Vodran regime struck their outpost, the humans had not done what the galaxy expected, what every power in our history would have done. They had not come to punish my world. They had looked at what happened and they had understood the thing that took me years to fully grasp, that the regime and the people were not the same, that the warlords had struck the outpost and the warlords' people had not. That to erase my homeworld in revenge would be to murder millions of beings for the crime of being ruled by tyrants they had not chosen and could not escape. And the humans had refused to do that. They had refused to commit the genocide the whole galaxy now believes they committed. Instead, they had done something far harder and far more precise and far more merciful. They had come in silence, and they had removed the ones who were actually responsible. The regime, the warlords, the few who had ordered the strike, and they had left the millions of innocent Vodran entirely unharmed. How they did it I still do not fully know. The humans never told us, the humans never told anyone, but I have pieced together enough over the years to understand the shape of it. They had come in the night, with whatever silent, precise capability they possessed, and the humans, I have learned, are very good at precision, very good at the quiet surgical use of force, much better at it than at the loud, destructive use the galaxy fears, and they had decapitated the regime. Taken the warlords, removed the apparatus of oppression, the whole cruel machine, in a single silent night, without harming the people it had ruled. It was a strike of incredible difficulty, far harder than simply destroying our world would have been. It is always harder to remove a tumor than to kill the patient, and they had done it perfectly, and they had done it silently, and then they had vanished, leaving my world free and whole and entirely unaware of who had freed it. And here is the part that I think is the most extraordinary, the part that is the deepest heart of what the humans did. They told no one. They claimed nothing. They did not announce that they had freed my world. They did not broadcast their mercy across the galaxy, did not say to the Vodran people, "We have liberated you, be grateful." They did not even tell us. They removed the regime in silence, and then they left in silence, and they let my people wake up to a world without tyrants and believe, for years many of us believed, that the regime had simply fallen on its own, collapsed under its own weight, fled in the night for reasons of its own. The humans took no credit. They wanted no credit. They had reached into my world, removed the tyranny that oppressed it, saved millions of lives that a vengeful power would have ended, and then they had erased even their own hand from the story, and slipped away into silence, and let my people have their freedom as if it were entirely their own. That silence, the silence the whole galaxy now believes was the silence of a murdered world, was the sound of the most merciful thing one people has ever done for another, done so quietly, so humbly, so completely without spectacle or credit that the galaxy mistook it for genocide. Because in our galaxy, you understand, a silent world means a dead world. Silence to the galaxy is the sound of the grave. And when the galaxy learned that the Vodran regime had struck a human outpost, and that afterward the regime and its entire military had simply vanished, and that the human fleet had been seen near our space, and that then there was silence, the galaxy filled in the silence the only way it knew how. It assumed the silence meant death. It assumed Earth had erased our world. It could not imagine, because nothing in our galaxy's experience allowed it to imagine, that the silence might mean something else entirely, that it might be the silence of a liberation performed without a single boast, the silence of a power great enough to topple a tyranny and humble enough to never once say so. Let me tell you what it was like to grow up on a world that had been freed and did not know it, and how I came, slowly, over years, to learn the truth of who had freed us, and why they had done it in silence, and what that silence finally taught me about a kind of strength my galaxy had never imagined could exist. Because the legend of Earth's silent genocide is a lie, but the silence at the heart of it is real, and the truth of what that silence was is the most important thing I have ever learned. I grew up on the world the humans had freed, and I want to tell you what that was like because it is the proof of everything, the proof that the silence was mercy and not murder. It is the simple fact that I had a childhood at all, a good one, on a world that should have been, by the galaxy's account, a graveyard. After the regime vanished, my world did not collapse. That was the thing the warlords had always told us would happen. That without them, without their strong hand, the Vodran would descend into chaos, that only the regime held us together, that we needed them. It was a lie, of course. It is always a lie, the lie that every tyrant tells the people they oppress, that the people cannot survive without their oppressor. When the regime vanished, my people did not descend into chaos. We did the opposite. Freed of the warlords who had bled us for generations, we began, slowly, carefully, to build something better. The ones who had quietly kept the knowledge of older, freer ways alive came forward. The people began to govern themselves, haltingly at first and then with growing confidence. The conscription ended. The fear lifted. The broadcasts that had told us we were mighty while we starved went silent, and in their place came real voices, ordinary voices, my people speaking freely for the first time in generations. I grew up in that, in the slow, beautiful unfolding of a world remembering how to be free. I grew up with enough food, and an education, and a future, and a mother who did not have to hold me in the night and fear the sky, on a world that the galaxy believed the humans had reduced to ash. And for years, like everyone, I believed we had freed ourselves. That was what we told ourselves in those early years, that the regime had fallen on its own, fled in the night, collapsed under its own rot. It was a story we were proud of, the story of a people who had thrown off their tyrants. We did not know it was not true. The humans had given us that too, you see. They had given us the dignity of believing we had freed ourselves, which is a gift so subtle and so profound that it took me most of my life to understand it. They could have taken credit. They could have made us a liberated client world, grateful and dependent, forever in their debt. Instead, they had vanished and let us believe our freedom was our own achievement, because they understood that a freedom you believe you won yourself is worth more, is stronger, is more truly yours, than a freedom you know was handed to you by a greater power. They did not just free us. They let us own our freedom. They gave up the credit so that we could have the dignity. I learned the truth slowly, in pieces, over many years. There were small things that did not fit the story we told ourselves. The regime had not just fled, it had vanished completely. Every warlord, every enforcer in a single night, with no sign of where they had gone, which is not how a government collapses on its own. Governments that fall leave bodies, leave fighting, leave traces, and ours had left none. There were the old recordings from the nights around the disappearance that showed strange readings in the upper atmosphere, things our instruments had caught but never explained. There were the whispers among those who studied such things, that the human fleet had been near our space in those days, and then had left and said nothing. And slowly, as I grew up and grew curious and began to investigate the founding story of my own free world, I assembled the truth that my people had never known, that we had not freed ourselves, that in the night, in silence, the humans had freed us, had reached into our world, removed our tyrants and left, taking nothing, claiming nothing, telling no one. And then I understood the silence. Then I understood all of it. I sought them out eventually, the humans. It took years, and it was not easy because the humans I found did not want to be found, not for this. But I was persistent, and at last I reached someone who would speak to me, an old human who had been part of it, part of the operation that had freed my world, and I asked her the questions I had carried my whole life. I asked her if it was true, if the humans had removed our regime in silence and let us believe we had done it ourselves. And she admitted it quietly, almost reluctantly, as though it were not a thing to be proud of but simply a thing that had been done. And I asked her why. Why save us at all when our regime had struck their outpost and killed their people? Why not take the revenge the whole galaxy expected? And then, this was the question that mattered most to me. Why the silence? Why free us and tell no one, take no credit, let us believe we had freed ourselves? Why give up the gratitude of a whole world? And the old human gave me the answer that is the deepest thing I have ever learned. She said, we didn't take revenge because revenge would have meant killing millions of people who never did anything to us. Your regime hit our outpost. Your regime. Not your farmers, not your children, not you. We don't punish people for the crimes of the ones who rule them. We learned a long time ago, on our own world, where that road goes, and it goes nowhere good. So we took out the ones who actually did it and we left everyone else alone. That part's simple, really. It's just refusing to murder the innocent. I wish it were rarer that anyone needed it explained. She paused, and then she answered the harder question, the one about the silence. As for why we kept quiet, that's the part people don't get. We stayed silent because the moment we took credit, we'd have ruined it. Think about it. If we'd announced that we freed you, then your freedom becomes our gift, and you become the people the humans liberated, forever in our shadow, forever in our debt, forever a little less than us. We'd have freed you and humiliated you in the same breath. And a freedom that comes with a master you have to thank isn't really freedom. It's just a gentler kind of ownership. So we kept quiet. We let you think you did it yourselves because you needed to think that, because a people that believes it won its own freedom stands taller than a people that knows it was rescued. We didn't free you so we could be thanked. We freed you so you could be free. And being free means it has to be yours. The silence wasn't us hiding what we did. The silence was the gift. The silence was the last and most important part of setting you free. The silence was the gift. Let me tell you what I did with that knowledge, and what I came to understand about the humans, and about strength, and about the strange and beautiful truth that the most powerful thing they ever did for my world was also the thing they made sure my world would never know they did. Because that silence, the silence the whole galaxy fears as the silence of a graveyard, is in truth the most generous silence in the history of the stars, and I have spent my life trying to find a way to honor it without breaking it. I have spent the rest of my life with an impossible problem. I know the truth, that the humans freed my world in silence and asked for nothing, not even to be known as our liberators. And I want, more than almost anything, to tell that truth, to correct the terrible legend, to let the galaxy know that the humans did not commit a genocide but performed the greatest act of mercy in our history. And yet I cannot, because to tell the truth fully would be to break the very gift the silence was. The humans freed my world and let us believe we freed ourselves precisely so that we could stand tall, could own our freedom, could be a people who had liberated themselves rather than a people who had been rescued. To stand up and announce across the galaxy, the humans freed us, we owe them everything, would be to undo that gift, to turn my proud free people back into the rescued, the indebted, the lesser. The humans gave up the credit so that we could have the dignity. How could I, of all people, take that dignity away by giving them back the credit they had so carefully refused? So I have lived in the space between the lie and the truth, and I have tried to find a way to honor the silence without breaking it. I have not told my people the full truth, that we did not free ourselves. I have let them keep that pride because the humans were right that it matters, that a people who believes it won its own freedom is stronger and truer than one that knows it was rescued. But I have done one thing. I have spent my life fighting the other lie, the worst lie, the legend of the genocide, the story the galaxy tells about Earth erasing my world in silence. Because that lie does a double harm. It makes the humans into monsters they are not, and it teaches the whole galaxy exactly the wrong lesson, the lesson that strength means annihilation, that the way to answer an attack is to erase a world. I cannot tell the galaxy the humans freed us. But I can tell them, and I have over and over, that the humans did not destroy us. I am living proof. I am Vodran. My world is alive, my people are free, and whatever happened in that silence, it was not the genocide you fear. That much I can say without breaking the gift. And I have said it everywhere I can my whole life. The legend is false. The Vodran live. Earth did not erase my homeworld. Most people still do not believe me. The legend is too strong, but some do. And every time someone believes me, every time someone lets go of the story of Earth's silent genocide and accepts that a living Vodran is standing in front of them, I have done a small thing to fight the lie that teaches the galaxy to worship destruction. It is not enough, but it is what I can do without taking my people's dignity from them, and so it is what I do. They struck a human outpost, and Earth erased their homeworld in silence. That is the legend, and almost everyone who hears it believes it means exactly what it says, that the humans annihilated a world, wiped out a species, committed a silent genocide in revenge. They believe it because it fits the only thing our galaxy understands about power, which is that power destroys, that the strong punish the weak, that an attack is answered with annihilation. And they have it exactly, completely, catastrophically wrong. Earth did erase my homeworld in silence, but what they erased was not my people. It was the tyranny that ruled them. They reached into my world and removed the regime that had struck their outpost, the warlords who had oppressed my people for generations. And they did it so silently, so precisely, so completely without spectacle or credit, that they left my world free and whole and never even told us they had done it. The silence the galaxy fears as the silence of a graveyard was the silence of a liberation, the silence of a power great enough to topple a tyranny in a single night, and humble enough to vanish without ever once saying, "We did this. Thank us." I think about that silence every day, about how the most powerful thing the humans ever did for my world was also the thing they made certain we would never know they did. About how they could have had the eternal gratitude of a liberated species, could have made us their grateful clients, could have been celebrated across the galaxy as the great liberators of the Vodran. And they gave all of that up, every bit of it, chose to be remembered as genocidal monsters rather than as our saviors, chose the lie that made them feared over the truth that would have made them loved, because the truth would have cost my people their dignity. And the humans cared more about our dignity than about their own good name. They let the whole galaxy believe they were murderers for our sake. They accepted the legend of their own genocide rather than break the gift of our freedom. I do not know if I will ever fully understand a strength like that, a strength so complete that it does not need to be seen, a mercy so deep that it hides itself, a power that frees a world and then erases its own hand from the story so that the freed world can stand on its own. That is what real strength looks like, I have come to believe. Not the power to erase a world. Anyone with enough firepower has that, and our galaxy is full of peoples who would have used it, who would have answered the strike on the Outpost with the genocide the legend describes and called it justice. Real strength is the power to erase a tyranny instead of a people, to reach into a world in the night and take out only the guilty, leaving the innocent untouched. And the deepest strength of all, the strength I have never seen in any people but the humans, is the strength to do that and then disappear, to give up all credit, to let the freed believe they freed themselves, to accept being called a monster rather than steal a single ounce of dignity from the people you saved. The humans had that strength. They spent it on my world, on a people who could give them nothing, who had even struck them first, and they asked for nothing in return, not even the truth. The galaxy says Earth erased my homeworld in silence. It is true, they did. They erased the tyranny that ruled it, and they erased their own credit for doing so, and they left behind a free people and a beautiful lie, and they vanished into a silence so generous that the whole galaxy mistook it for the silence of death. It was not the silence of death. I should know. I have lived my whole life inside it. It was the silence of the kindest thing anyone has ever done so quietly that it could be mistaken for the cruelest. And I am alive, and my people are free because of a strength so great it never needed us to know it was there. That is the truth of the silence. And even now, telling you, I have kept their secret as much as I have broken it, because some gifts are too generous to repay, and the only way to honor them is to let them stay, a little in the silence where they were given.